There we go. When we record these sessions, we post them in our help index out at amion.com, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. But yeah, they're there for anybody to watch or share with somebody who couldn't make it. As I'll explain as we go along here, Amion is a really neat tool for making schedules and looking at schedules. But after being around for about 20 years, we've added so many features that people have asked us for. And so the purpose of this session here is both to demonstrate Amion and what it does, and also to kind of explain the schedule building process and all the features that people can use or not use, depending on what they're hoping to do. So I am the friendly face and voice of Amion. So this session's super informal. If you guys are at lunchtime, feel free to eat lunch. You won't have to, there's no pop quiz or anything like that. We're going to spend about an hour together, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, depending on how many questions there are. And we will spend the first 10 minutes or so looking at a finished schedule out at amion.com, a schedule that's been built and published, one that's up and running, and we'll kind of explain what that's like for end users, staff who need to see when they're working. And then after that initial 10 minutes or so, we'll get into building a schedule together. We'll start from scratch with something really simple, and we'll get more complicated as we go. And eventually we'll use the system's auto scheduler. So we'll put some rules in and some vacations, and we'll have the system build a schedule for us automatically, which is really kind of cool. So let's dive into that first 10-minute section. Maybe 12 minutes, depending on how fast I talk. So this is amion.com, pretty straightforward, right? It's a website like any other. Doesn't matter what browser you're using. I'm using Safari on my Mac, but you can use Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer for now. Any other kind of browser, I say for now, because Internet Explorer is going away, I guess. They're not supporting it anymore. But any browser will work. Any device will work. You can get here from your phone or an iPad or a tablet, anything like that. And basically, you go to amion.com, you put in your access code, and you see your schedule. So if you're an end user like a doc or a nurse or a PA, anybody like that, anybody at all, actually, who has the right access code, you can get in and see the schedule that's been posted. That's one side of Amion, the viewable, looking at my schedule side. The other side of Amion that we'll get into later is this OnCall program. So I'm pointing to this tiny little OnCall icon at the bottom of my screen. It's a little icon. It looks like blue, green, and white squares. This is a lot like the Microsoft Word blue W, or Excel green X. Same idea. It's an application that lets me make schedule files. So I can build a schedule file and put it together, put people on, and then I can take that schedule file and publish it. We use the word publish it out to the website for people to see. But before we get into the on-call program and making our own schedule, let's log in and look at a finished schedule out at the website. So again, amion.com from anywhere. I'm going to log in with the access code site, SITE. It's going to take me in to see a schedule. And just keep in mind, you can also use your mobile phone to see this stuff. We just changed the homepage a little bit so that people can hold their phone up and get this QR code and get the mobile app for iPhone or Android. That's a nice way to see the schedule on a small screen if you're using your phone a lot. But I'll log in with SITE, all lowercase, to take a look at one of our sample schedules. And you guys don't have to do what I'm doing, but if you ever want to explore this schedule, that access code will get you in and you can tinker around. This is a fake schedule, so no harm in messing around inside the schedule. What we see here is this really huge, long list of people working today. We call this an enterprise account. Enterprise sounds like a fancy sales sort of word, but enterprise to us means that there are a bunch of different departments at this hospital that all use Amion to make their schedule. And the enterprise really ties them together in one big list. So, not every schedule is like this at Amion. Some schedules are very small, simple, people who are working in a small private practice. Here's an example of what we call a single license schedule. This is just a small group of people. After Amion existed for a few years, we started offering the ability for people to stack their schedules together into one big list like this enterprise. And then that kind of took off. A lot of hospital systems around the country use Amion this way now. And here's why. Back in the olden days, I was a scheduler for a surgery department up here in the Northeast. I would build my schedule on paper, believe it or not, every month, and I'd have to fax it over to the switchboard. And the switchboard would get my fax. It would get like 30 other faxes from all the different departments in the hospital, and it would have to put together this big book of call. So this actual 3-ring binder of call that they'd have to make copies of and send to the different parts of the hospital. And it was a really confusing time, a lot of room for error. And then, the minute one of my folks called to say, hey, I traded shifts with this person, can you update the schedule? I would say, oh boy, okay, I'll change the schedule. I've got to send a fax into the switchboard. They had to throw away their call book and build a new one. It was a lot of chaos. The idea here with Amion's enterprise list here, this who's on today list, is that everybody who manages a schedule can update their own piece of this list. Andy, the anesthesia scheduler, can control his dozen or so assignments. Carol in cardiac surgery can control hers. There's Dave who does the dental schedule. He controls his 3 assignments. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Barbara in bioethics handles bioethics consult. It's just one person. But the idea here is that everybody in each department can maintain their own part of this list. Which is great. So the switchboard folks that used to have to put together all those faxes, they don't have to do that anymore. They look at this list as well. If Andy makes a change, this schedule's accurate immediately. If somebody calls the switchboard can say, yeah, it's Dr. Tang, the chief resident who's on day consult today. Here's how you reach them, or we can get a message to them. And better yet, the person who's looking for that consult can just log into Amion or look at their phone at the Amion app and see that assignment straight away. They don't, necessarily need to call a central switchboard to get that info. So it kind of streamlines all the communication. Everybody knows who's on. That's kind of where we got our name, Amion. Like, am I on call? Well, like the answer is yes or no, right away. At this page, there are a few other features. They're meant to be pretty straightforward. You can pick which day you're looking at. You can take a look at tomorrow, or you can use the arrows to get forward and backward through time. The North Star icon takes you to the current day, and you can search for providers by name if you want. This list is divided up into departments, so I could just look at all the surgery type schedules if I wanted. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. This is a feature that's helpful. This time selector lets me take a look at what the schedule looked like at, say, 5 a.m. when a bunch of folks were on their overnight shifts. A lot of these folks have red bloodshot eyes next to their assignment. That's Amion's sort of goofy feature for letting you know that this person was on call all night long and they're still working the next morning. So they might be a little cranky. But that's a helpful tool for people to see what the schedule is going to look like later that day or earlier that day. And I should mention, if it's like 5 a.m. and Andy, the anesthesia person, is not at his desk, the switchboard does have the ability to mark up this list. They can come into this list and swap out assignments or add a note for somebody. They can keep this list accurate pretty close to 24/7. I can use this drop down at the top to get to a particular group, or I can just click on one of the groups along the left here. You can see this list of departments is alphabetical, and within each department, there are services. A couple of them are grayed out. You'll see Andy's anesthesia schedule has a night 1 and a night 2 service. They're grayed out because they haven't started yet. 4 p.m. is when that shift starts. So Dr. Liu and Dr. Valu, they come online later on today. Those folks are residents. You can see their training level, and then you get to see contact info for everybody on the schedule. There's These folks use 4-digit internal hospital pagers for the most part. I think some of the folks at this hospital list their cell phone numbers. The chaplains, it looks like they put their cell phone numbers out there. The chief of staff has a cell phone number out there. You can add all kinds of contact info. This sample schedule is pretty straightforward and stripped down. You'll see all these bubbles here, these green or red bubbles. Those are folks that have registered with the mobile app. So Dr. Tang, the chief resident, installed the Amion app on her phone, and so she can get messages sent from app to app with her coworkers, or we can send messages to her right from the schedule. So if I'm a switchboard operator and it's the overnight and I need to get that day consult person, I can click that bubble or that number. This group is set up to send messages from the Amion schedule to the mobile app and to the pager. So you get that message. Dr. Tang gets that message in both places, kind of like a redundant fail-safe thing. She'll get it on her Alpha pager as well as on her mobile app. So here's what it looks like when I send a message from Lee at Amion. Call home ASAP. And there goes my message. It's also possible to send messages to groups of people. You can send a message out to all the residents, for example, something like that. Lots of neat little features. Amion plays nice with lots of other messaging systems, including things like Tiger Connect and Vocera and Patient Safe. Also regular SMS stuff like AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile, and pretty happy to play nice with lots of other systems. We'll talk about that more later. Let me see. Let me click on one of these groups. If I click on cardiac surgery, we get to see their monthly schedule. We're always set to the current month, but I can back up and look at older schedule data. We don't take anything down from what's posted at Amion unless people ask us to. So there's a lot of old historic data sitting up here for this group. A lot of the icons at the top look a little unusual. We're in the middle of reworking some of those icons, so they're a little more straightforward. This one has the mouse over note assignments by staff. I'm not sure if that mouse over note makes it through the Zoom meeting, but it'll give you an idea of what's going to happen when you click if you kind of hold your mouse still. This is a staff list, just a list of people working in your group. So you get a nice list of names and numbers. I like the one that looks like two black arrows pointing towards each other. This flips the schedule inside out. So I get names down the left, dates across the top. Maybe I want to have dates down the left and names across the top. You can really flip this schedule in a lot of different directions to make it look like what you are used to seeing. You can pull up individual rows. Maybe you don't want to see all the rows on the schedule, but you want to see one particular service only and carve out all the other stuff that you're not worried about. Or maybe you do want to see all the rows and you want to highlight your name, maybe your coworkers' names. You can kind of compare schedules. We've tried to do everything we could to make this schedule info as easy to navigate as possible. Down at the bottom, there's a time and date stamp, so people know when the schedule was last updated. And then there's a contact. Anthony, the admin for this group, is the guy to email if you have questions about what you see. There's a note, and then there's a pager directory. So everybody's number is next to their name. Everybody who's working this month has a listing in this directory, and we can click a number and send a message out like we did before, or we can click a name and pull up a particular person's schedule. This is just Dr. Blodgett and only her. And all the assignments that you see here are perfusion call. So she's a perfusionist. That's all that she does. She's on today, the 15th. She's off tomorrow. She's on this coming weekend. If she wanted to sync up her Amion assignments with her Google Cal, iCal, iPhone, Outlook, whatever she might use for a personal calendar system, she can do that with this link down below. Clicking this gets you to a really specific URL that you can then drop into whatever system you're using. Kind of handy because those things will then stay in sync. If Anthony changes Blodgett's perfusion call this weekend and puts somebody else on instead, that change will flow out into Blodgett's Outlook calendar. And if she and her husband share an Outlook calendar, they might refer to that and know who's going to be free to go to Jimmy's soccer game on Saturday. So it helps keep, your work stuff and your personal stuff in sync, and it's real-time connection. So when Anthony makes that change, it's like a minute later that change affects the Outlook calendar, for example. Okay, enough out of me rambling over the front-facing online view of an Amion schedule. This one is, like I said, part of a big enterprise, a hospital-wide grouping of assignments. Sometimes it's not just a hospital, it's like a health system where it has, many different hospitals within it. But that's what the schedules look like when they're built and pushed out online. Anybody with the right access code can see these schedules. Up next, we're going to get into making a schedule, but I usually like to pause here. Any questions out there? I see a couple folks who joined in after we got started. No worries there. We're going to record this session, and there are other recordings of past sessions out there that you can watch if you missed anything. But anybody have any questions so far? If you do, let me know via that chat window. There's the Zoom chat window that I think, it's funny, before the pandemic, not everybody knew where the Zoom chat was. And since everybody did school via Zoom, it seems like most folks know where the Zoom chat window is now. Everybody with me so far? Any questions out there? I'll also use this as an excuse to take a big sip of coffee. Okay, great. Let's go back to Amion.com, the homepage. There's some pretty self-explanatory stuff out here at the homepage. You can order a license. It is possible for some folks to build a schedule and use Amion without ever talking to us, but we're a friendly bunch. We like to help people get started. So if you're set on ordering a license, maybe reach out to us first and see if we can help you navigate. If you're part of a big hospital that already uses Amion, you might already have a password, so you may not need to order anything. There's a contact link down at the bottom. My friends on the marketing team just put this survey up here the other day. Kind of neat to get feedback from people. The contact link is how you get a hold of our team. I'm part of a team of 10. We do training and support all day long, and there's somebody on call at night and on the weekends as well. So you can always get a hold of us if you need a hand. Although most of our training happens like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. if you're on the West Coast. The help index is great. This is where the most commonly asked questions and answers live. And this recording, the recording of this Thursday session, usually ends up here under the attendings demo. The attendings demo section or heading. A lot of neat videos have been added here over the years. If you want to learn how your staff can swap shifts with each other, for example, there's an entry on that, and the little play button tells you there's a video there. So that's available 24/7. But contact us if you have a quick question. We're happy to answer it. There's other links out here, messaging, scheduling, explanations of that stuff. Pretty boring, pretty straightforward, but you're welcome to check it out. The download link here at the lower left is where most schedule builders will go first. So to be clear, anybody who wants to see their schedule can go to amion.com, use their access code, and they're in. They don't have to install anything. They can do it from the web. They can do it from the web on their phone, or they can use the mobile app and do it from their phone. But the folks that make schedules would usually download our OnCall program. This OnCall scheduling application that I've got on my desktop it comes from this download link. And we've been doing things this way for a long time. Recently, we started putting the OnCall program in the cloud. So there is a cloud-based version of the OnCall program. So if you are on a computer where you can't install stuff, or you're working remotely, or you're on a what they call a thin client, so like a nursing station at the hospital where you can't install anything at all, you can use the program in the cloud. It's now accessible via the web entirely. But most folks still like to download the program. It's the fastest way to make a schedule because the The system doesn't have to rely on your web connection to do it. But all that to say, in about a year, maybe less, maybe 6 months or so, Amion's old school desktop scheduling software is getting a big facelift, and it's going to be a website for everybody to use online. It's kind of neat. All right. I've got the program installed on my machine already, so I'm going to open it up. This OnCall icon, I'm going to click to open it. And what you'll see is this very 1999 looking interface. And the reason it looks that way is because it's from about 1999. Amion grew so quickly over the past 20 years or so that we did not give this a facelift, but we are in the middle of that now. And after all, I think this is my 15th year with Amion, and I'm super excited to have made it to the point where we are now going to make this look very pretty, probably by the spring or summer of this year. Anyway, this program is really powerful. It's got tons of features packed into it, and I'm going to build a schedule now, and we'll kind of walk through the most commonly used, approach to doing that. In fact, before I do that, though, let me talk about the day-to-day maintenance. If you're a scheduler, you might be working on the schedule, and you might need to make a quick tweak. You might have your schedule up and running. Once it's up and running, it's very easy to use. Let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to use a couple keys on my keyboard to get back to the internet. I'm going to look at my sample schedule, this single license, non-enterprise private practice that uses Amion. And, my boss just called, and he said, hey, Lee, I just got a text from Mars Rover, M Rover. That's one of my providers, and she's on call today, but she can't work today. Her kids have COVID and RSV. It's going around. So she's got to go take them out of school and be home with them. Can you, Lee, can you change the schedule to put somebody else on? And I would say, yeah, boss, no problem. I'm going to flip open my on-call program. I was working on March of next year, but let me head back to December. There it is. And let's see, the 15th, right? Okay. There's a lot of stuff going on in this schedule. I use it for demos all the time. So there's notes and little clocks for adjusted shift times and all sorts of stuff like that. But really, the thing to pay attention to is the yellow where my cursor lives. I'm clicking here to get the yellow cursor on the 15th. There's M Rover. I'm going to click delete on my keyboard to pull her name out of there. In that way, it's a little bit like Excel. These are cells that I can, click and drag and drop things into and even type things into. But I'm going to pull M Rover out of there and put V Moon on instead. Now, I notice there's a flag. This may not want me to do that because there might be a rule about taking call 2 days in a row, but that's okay. I just need to get somebody on to finish today's shift. So V Moon is on today. And now I need to get this schedule out to the website where people can see it. So since we're talking about 1999, there are the menus at the top of the screen here: File, Edit, View, stuff that should be, pretty familiar if you were around in that era, like I certainly was. Under File, there's New and Open and Save and Print, and all those things work the way you'd expect them to. You can create a new schedule, you can open an existing one, you can save it, you can print it, you can exit out. But the one that's a little different is Publish to Amion. And this is the move. Sometimes people call it, they'll say push, but we're pushing or publishing the schedule out to the website. So we've edited this local file, and I'm asking the system to publish this schedule. And it's using a specific admin password for my schedule only. It's got my contact email because I'm the scheduler. It knows how far ahead I want to publish the schedule. So I'm working on next summer, but I don't want folks to see beyond June 30th yet. So that's my cutoff date for them looking at the schedule. All I have to do is say save to Amion, and maybe a second goes by, and I get your file is updated. So back out at the website, if I refresh my screen or log in fresh, I see my update. There's V Moon taking call today. That's in the daily list of assignments as well as in the monthly view. There's my monthly view. So the day-to-day maintenance is as easy as that. Now, maybe my boss calls back and says, you know what, false alarm, M Rover can work. Her husband's got the kids covered. What a guy. Can you put her back on today? Yeah, no problem. I head to my schedule editor, head down to the 15th, delete vMoon out of there, put Rover back on, looking good. File publish to Amion as my next move. The system remembers my details, and save to Amion gets my file updated, which means that out at the web, my change has been made. So it's like we have a tool that lets people affect a website, and we let the website be where everybody looks to see the schedule. All right, so that's the day-to-day. Now let's build something from scratch and see how easy that'll be. I'm back here in the OnCall program, and I'm going to start to pick up steam a little bit because I'm going to be pretty arbitrary. I'm just going to make up a fake schedule with some fake people, but please feel free to flag me down in the chat window if I'm going too fast or too slow. I don't mind being interrupted. I've been doing this for over a decade, so please keep any comments or questions coming as they come up. So this time I'm going to click File and New. You probably only have to do this, when you first start making your schedule. Once the schedule exists, you kind of keep on moving into the future. You never have to start something from scratch again. But here's what it looks like if you're just getting started. You can build a provider style schedule, what we call the attending style schedule, or you can build the residency style schedule. Amion's been around 20 years. We still do just one thing. We just make schedules, but there are two kinds. I'm going to choose the top option today. The only difference here is that the bottom option includes a block rotation component. So if you're a resident, you might spend a month on this team and then a month on that team. And depending on what team you're on, you might take certain call and clinic and shift. But I'm going to go for the simpler option, the one at the top here, the attending style. And here we go, picking up speed. So the services in my general setup, this place where all the criteria on the schedule goes. Let's have a night call service. How about a SICU service? Maybe a weekend service. SICU, did I already get that in there? How about an AM clinic? You can add as many services as you want. I was clicking enter on my keyboard instead of the add button, but you can do either. There are 4 working services here and then 3 off-schedule services, CME, sick, and vacation. Those come preloaded. You can add to that list of off-schedule stuff. You might have maternity or PTO, but those will be things that make people unavailable to work. So if somebody's on vacation, they can't work in the SICU, which is what we'll set up in a minute. I'm sticking with just a handful of services here, but just keep in mind, you can add as many rows as you want. You can have 100 or 80 or 90 or 100 rows of service, things that people do in here. Amion doesn't charge by the service or by the assignment. So go wild, add as many things to the schedule as it is, as makes your life easier. I'll stick with just a handful for now. Staff types, these are the categories that staff fall into. And it's, again, super open-ended. I could have a dog walker staff type. Anything goes in here. These fields can be anything that fits, tech, RN, APRN. There are all sorts of options I've seen. You can color code those any way you want. The tab for staff is where names go. Usually when folks are building their schedule, if they're part of a big hospital, I'll urge them to check on other departments in this hospital. I'll also urge them to check and make sure they spell their names right. There we go. If other departments at your hospital are following some kind of color code, or if they enter things as a last name, comma, first name, all the MDs are in red, you might want to make sure that you're doing the same thing so that when the switchboard looks at that big list of assignments across many different schedules, they're pretty consistent. All the MDs are in red at all the schedules. But again, you can add as many staff as you want here. I'm going to stick with 6 names, but you could easily have 100 or more names on the schedule. Amion doesn't charge more for the number of people that you're scheduling. It's still $399 a year for a schedule of any size. The tab for finish gets me to the end of the line here. I'm going to leave everybody available to work. and I'm going to display my schedule. I'm going to close the general setup for now. This general setup is always available to me under the file menu. If I forgot to add a person or if I forgot to add a row to the schedule, it's out there for me to grab. I'm going to close my floating info box for the minute while I stretch and skew the schedule and make it fit my screen as cleanly as possible. I always encourage people to make your schedule layout as easy on your eyes as you can. I don't want to scare anybody, but under this window menu lives a lot of the features that Amion's packed in over the years. You'll see the auto scheduler here as a hint of the really cool tool we'll be using in a few minutes, but I'm going to choose the font option. Under Windows font, and I can really make my font something that's easy to see. 22, that's a good size. No squinting at this screen. That'll be easy to see. Okay, now I'm going to dive in here and be pretty arbitrary and set up some rules, but I'm going to, try to use the ones that are most common. But to get us started, let's just go ahead and schedule Nightcall by clicking once per day. Now, eventually we will use the auto scheduler. I'm going to turn off my highlighter. We will use the auto scheduler, but a lot of folks will still schedule by hand. And because that's the case, we try to make that as easy as possible as well. So 1 click per day got me this week's worth of Nightcall assignments. That's it. We don't want you to click twice, to move your cursor and then to pick a name. We're trying to streamline it as much as possible. 1 click per day will get you your assignments in there. That's Nightcall. That's all it takes to get some assignments in there. We could publish this schedule if we wanted to. Of course, we're going to do a whole bunch more. We're going to set the hours, add some contact info, put some people on vacation, make some rules, all sorts of things. I noticed that Christmas is on the 26th on this schedule. I think that's when it's observed for my group, but I do want to move that. Under window is holidays, and I'm going to head to Christmas of 22. I would like Christmas to fall on the 25th. Just about everything you see in here is able to be manipulated. All right, up next, let's build some really simple guidelines about our services. I'm opening up the info box, this little floating toolbar here. This, I call this my trusty sidekick because it really does everything I might want it to, depending on where I click. If I click on a service, like one of my services, it tells me everything about that service. If I click on the spot where a name belongs, I get a list of names. This list of names is pretty basic. There are some tiny little icons that I can use to toggle on a running count of how many times people have done stuff this month and this year. I get a busy bar if I want. I have hashtags for the number of weekends they've worked. You don't have to use these tiny granular features, but sometimes, well, I should say many times over the past 20 years, someone has called us and said, what would be neat if I could just see like what other people have coming up over the next few weeks so I'd know when to schedule them and when to avoid it. So we've added a bunch of little tools in here for people to have an easier time when they schedule by hand. If I click on the blank gray background, the info box changes again to give me a date range option and to let me track any changes on the schedule. Kind of neat. All right, let's see. Let's click on the name of a service along the left. Nightcall, that's up here at the top of the list. Well, I don't want it up there. I want Nightcall to be at the bottom. So I'm clicking and dragging that row. AM Clinic, that should be at the top. That makes more sense. Now, the Nightcall service runs 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That doesn't make much sense, right? Nightcall runs overnight. So let's make it run 6 p.m. to, say, 6 a.m., that kind of thing, 12-hour shift. Now I'm going to click on these buttons in the info box, and you're going to see a whole bunch of windows pop up on the screen. Again, I don't want to scare anybody, but we'll just kind of take one approach to setting up some rules. Let's see. Nightcall runs 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's staffed by all of my staff, all the different kinds of people. It happens every day of the week. How about some tallies? Not every group will use this, but you can say, you know, nobody likes working Saturday night call. So we're going to give a payroll differential to that particular day. If you work a Saturday night call, you earn 3 points instead of just 1. That'll get us some more folks to be interested in working that night. How about a rule relative to night call? If you work night call, you shouldn't work anything else that same day, and you should be off the next day as well from all the other services. So if you're on seeing patients at night, you should be home in bed the next day. Good. How about if you work night call, you carry the night call pager. Instead of people's personal phones, when they work nights, everybody knows that the 5555 pager gets you to the night call person. They pass that pager between them. All right, that works. That's a good rule. We've got our tally weights. How about the AM clinic? You know, the AM clinic is a weekday thing. It doesn't happen on weekends and holidays. So I'll turn it off for Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, as opposed to the weekend service, which is only staffed on weekends and holidays. Good, good. Okay. The SICU, that's a pretty specialized department or specialized service. So only MDs can work there. I've turned it off for the other staff types, which means only names in red will appear in this as an option. All right. Looking good, looking good. So there's one more thing I want to do here as far as guidelines for our services, and that's set up a little mini pattern. I'd like, just because this is a pretty common thing, I'd like the person who gets stuck working Saturday on the weekend service to also be working Sunday. Saturday, if you get Saturday, you get Sunday as well. And to do that, I'm going to use one of Amion's slightly more advanced tools just to show it off. This call and shift patterns window will let me build a pattern. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into explaining this. There's a really good help page and video on it if anybody is interested. But I am going to make a weekend pattern that starts on a Monday. I just want Saturday and Sunday to be contiguous, to go to the same person, worker 1, whoever that might be. If you get Saturday, you get Sunday. Great. Now I can just tell the weekend service that it's not variable anymore. It's going to follow my pattern. And that should mean that when I add somebody to the weekend service, they get both weekend days, Saturday and Sunday. Good. All right. Okay. I think that's as far as I want to go with setting up guidelines for our services. Up next, I'm going to set up some availability for our people, put some people on vacation, and then we'll let the auto scheduler kind of do its thing and build us a schedule from scratch, which is kind of exciting if you're a scheduling geek like me. Okay, we're here in December. Let's talk about all this nonsense that's happening up here at the top left. These blue arrows, well, everything has a mouse over note, just like it would out at the website. These will say next month and previous month, so I can go back to November and October and go ahead to January if I want to. You don't ever have to rebuild your schedule template. You can just kind of move on into the future with it. And the bullseye brings you back to the current date. So here we are over on the 15th. We're working with the schedule in calendar format. There's also a table format. There's this icon at the top left that looks like a kitchen table. That lays the schedule out like a grid. And sometimes it's nice to work in the schedule in table format because you can really squeeze it together. The system uses abbreviations instead of full names. So if I had a schedule that was like 80 or 90 rows big, it might be nice to look at it like this. I can pack it together tightly and not have to scroll around too much. Whichever way the schedule's laid out when you publish it to the web is how your staff are going to see it online. Table view, calendar view, it's up to you. Well, that rhymed, but I didn't mean it to. The other two views up at the top left here, we'll cover those next. And then there's this like divider bar right under options. This divider bar to the right of that are just some really basic tools that'll let you do things like split shifts and add notes. We'll get to those in a minute. So we've got the schedule and table view, the schedule and calendar view, and then there's a face icon, third from the top left. We call this the work preferences page. Sometimes I call it the profile page. Eyes and nose here. It's where anything specific to a person happens. And you can look at one person, or you can, as the mouse over note says, you can control click and look at all the people together. But let's use Patel as our example. I'll open up my info box, my trusty sidekick. And when we're here, the info box lets me talk about this person in particular, or whichever person I choose. Patel can be our example. Let's say Patel, she's been part of our group for a couple decades now. She's getting ready to retire. She's no longer 100% FTE. She's a half-timer. She works 50%. Her abbreviation in the system is PA, but that's awfully close to Patterson. So let's make her abbreviation PTL. We can customize that. There's room in here to set up a target for her. I can give her a target number of shifts to work each month. I could say she works, she's got a target of 4 shifts to work each month. I can also set up more complicated targets if I want to. There's this really complicated rule builder that I probably won't touch on today, but you can build a complicated target rule if you need to. Patel, since she's getting ready to retire, she doesn't work on Fridays anymore. So I'm going to mark her as unavailable most Fridays. And I can click the Works At button and talk about where she's allowed to work. And, since Patel's getting ready to retire, she doesn't cover AM clinic anymore. Or, Nightcall. She doesn't cover Nightcall anymore. She only does daytime stuff since she's going to retire soon. We need to give her some contact info. Maybe Patel carries her own pager, and she might have an email address in the system. She's going to need an email address if she wants to do things like swap shifts and make requests, which I'll talk about in a minute. Everybody can use our fake@hosp.org domain. That works for me. Other stuff that's a little more advanced lives in here. You can set up the preferred days to work. You can add notes to special requests. We won't go too deep down that rabbit hole. I want to stick to my pretty basic story here. There is one more thing I want to do. The drop-down menu at the top has our off-schedule services. So remember those things like CME, sick, and vacation. We can choose from this list. I'm going to grab vacation and give Patel Christmas week off. She's going to take the week between Christmas and New Year's off. Her twin boys are home from school. She wants to spend some time on the ski slopes with them, so she's off that week. All right. Now, we did this by hand. We put in Patel's preferences by hand. There is a really big time saver tool where you can let your staff enter their preferences. I'm back out at the website now, and I'm going to pretend to be one of the people on this fake schedule, like Lisa L. Claire, for example. You can ask your staff to submit their time off online. When I talk about the 3 big time savers that Amion offers folks, this is number 1. Instead of me sending out an email to my staff and getting like 50 replies and having to build a vacation schedule, and nobody knows what anybody else had asked for as far as time off. These days, I let my staff submit their requests out at the website. And it's kind of nice because staff get to see what their coworkers have asked for. So if I'm L. Claire and I'm making my December requests, I can see on Sunday the 11th, A. Campbell has vacation, and that might help me. It might help dictate what I choose and what I don't choose. Today, the 15th, my coworker Pluto has a couple shifts that she's unavailable for. Maybe this isn't a good day for me to select off, So I'd make my selections, and then I can submit I can add a note as well if I want to. Maybe it's Susie's holiday dance recital and I don't want to miss that. So I can submit my preferences and they flow automatically into the schedule builder. So in the schedule builder, there's an icon that imports all those requests. So the way I like to do it is I send out a message to my staff. I actually do it right from Amion.com. I log in as an administrator and I send out a work preference form to all my staff. There's a whole help page on this. I won't spend too much time talking about it, but it gives each of my staff a really specific link that they can use to submit their requests. They click a link, it takes them straight in, so they don't have to worry about logging in directly. But I might give them a deadline that says like, need your requests by Friday at noon. So Friday morning comes, I sit back and make my coffee. I don't have to be scrambling to put together a vacation schedule and making sure everybody knows what everybody else had asked for. People can see that as they go. And then Friday at 12:01, I might go in and build my schedule. Everybody's requests will be in here already. Big time saver. You know, it used to take me a few hours to put together everybody's requests, but the system actually doing it this way will collate those requests automatically. Kind of neat. That's big time saver number one. All those requests might get input automatically by my staff. And then I might go back to the schedule and use big time saver number two, which is the system's auto scheduler. And I can have the system actually make me a schedule that takes into account all the rules and all the guidelines and all the vacation requests. It's going to pay attention to that stuff. Now, quick side note, I put Patel on Nightcall before I told the system that she doesn't work Nightcall. And so it didn't like remove her assignment automatically, but it did throw up a flag. This squiggly line has a mouse over note that says, Patel's not supposed to work Nightcall. We're violating our own rule. So I probably want to put somebody else in there in her place. There we go. Even my infobox list of names knows that my rules are in place. It knows what to do and what not to do. Let's have the auto scheduler do the heavy lifting for us. This is big time saver number 2 of 3. So number 1 was getting staff to enter their own requests. Now there's requests are in there. Time saver number 2, I clicked window and opened up the auto scheduler. And I'm going to ask the system to make me a schedule. And I can do it over any time frame. Maybe I'll go November and December, or you could do the whole year if you wanted to. I won't mess around with any of these toggles. I'm going to let the auto scheduler do its thing. Let's fill in the SICU first, because I know I have a limited number of people who can work in the SICU, just my MDs. In fact, I've got a problem on this Sunday where I don't have an MD to work. We'll talk about that in a minute. Weekends are pretty sought after. We'll do those next. Nightcall. Watch as I fill in the Nightcall row. The stuff that I've entered in already by hand, it's going to stay there. The auto scheduler is only going to fill in the holes in my schedule, which is kind of nice. There we go. And then AM Clinic can be, whoever's left over can work AM Clinic. Great. Not too shabby. We've got a schedule. I am going to click and use my highlighter tool to show me the holes on the schedule, because I spotted one. This is the SICU on Sunday the 4th. And the reason we have a problem here is that I've got Ahmed working Nightcall the night before, and there's a rule that you don't work anything after you take Nightcall. I've got Rosen working Nightcall on the 4th itself, and there's the same rule that says you can't work anything the same day as Nightcall. So we probably want to fix that. If I don't have Nightcall, or I don't have Rosen on Nightcall, we can put Ruiz on Nightcall, and we can put Rosen in SICU instead. So you can make a few tweaks to the schedule after your auto scheduler has done its thing. Oh, by the way, this is a neat feature. See this halo around Patel's abbreviations? That lets me know how close we came to her target. And we are way over her target of 4 shifts. We're at 8. And that's because she is... well, she's on too many shifts. I think I don't have enough staff in my group to have the system fill her target and then balance things for everybody else. If I were to remove some of Patel's shifts, you'll see that halo start to get smaller. Now she's only 6 shifts over. Okay. Because I put her on the weekend shift, she got 2 shifts there. If I remove another one of her shifts, that halo gets smaller still. And maybe if I take her off this other weekend, we'll be back to having a white halo, which means she's under her target number of shifts. Kind of interesting, right? Neat to be able to do that. If I get it just right and have her at her target, there's no halo around her name at all. Oh, don't want to put Ruiz there since Ruiz is tied to Nightcall. Don't want to put Smith there because Smith was on Nightcall the night before. So you can see how the system was smart enough to know what to do. I'm going to leave this alone. Maybe it's okay to take weekend and Nightcall. But check out our schedule. The system really built it while taking into account all of our rules. Patel, who's highlighted here, has vacation the week of Christmas. She doesn't work on Fridays. She doesn't take Nightcall. She's a part-timer. We don't have anybody working Nightcall and then taking anything else the next day. We've got our one exception where Ruiz works weekend and Nightcall the same day. Otherwise, if you're on Nightcall, you don't do anything that day. If you get stuck working the weekend, you get both Saturday and Sunday. All the rules we built into place, like only MDs in the SICU, AM clinic is only Monday through Friday, all that stuff got followed. So big time saver number 2 is the system makes our schedule and takes all those guidelines and availability into account. Now, what I do after I build the schedule like this is head to the 4th view here, the 4th icon from the top left for statistics and tallies. And this is where everything's counted up. We have a row for each person and a column for each thing that they do. So Patel has 11 AM clinics. If I open up my trusty sidekick, the info box, it tells me the tally number of, we're tallying shifts. So the numbers that you see here are the number of shifts by service. So we have a column for each service. I could tally up hours if I wanted to tally hours instead, or tally shifts or hours by day of the week. And then I get a column for each day of the week, weekends versus weekdays, hours and nights and weekends. Oh, and here's our points column. This is kind of interesting. You get typically 1 point for one shift worked, except for that Saturday night call. Remember, we said if you work a Saturday night call, you earn a little extra payroll differential. So these folks, Smith has 31 points, but only 21 shifts because she must have worked a Saturday night. And you can do that over any time frame. Like I said earlier, Amion plays nice with a lot of other systems, including things like payroll systems and evaluation systems. So if you build your schedule in Amion, you can have this data flow out into other systems if you want to. I will now show you the most schedule geeky thing that I think exists in the system. You can actually click and drag a total from one person to another here in the system. If I see that Dr. Wang has 4 AM clinics and Rosen has 2, and they're probably not going to like that, or Ahmed has 5 and Rosen has 2, that's not going to fly. So I'm going to click and drag the totals from one person to another. And then the system uses a tool we call tweak the tallies to give one from Ahmed to Rosen. Pretty geeky, but that's a nice way to adjust the schedule while you're looking at the tallies. Last of the 3 time savers. So we had the requests being input by staff. That's a big time saver. We have the auto scheduler, which is great and builds the draft schedule. But number 3 is that I can publish this schedule to the web and I can let my staff swap shifts with each other. This isn't used by every schedule out there, but if you want to, you can propose or you can let staff propose and accept swaps. I've logged in as my fake person, L. Claire, again, and I can look at my upcoming shifts and propose a trade. I can pick one of those shifts and say, oh, I don't want to work the day after Christmas, but I know somebody who owes me a favor. It's Jay Cindy. I'll take her night back up the following night. Maybe she'll want to trade with me. My note could be something specific. Hey, man, you owe me one. That note goes out to the other person via email, and it's got all the details. It's got my note, kind of a neat tool. If this other person accepts the swap, if they get their email, they click the link and they say, yeah, I'll work the day after Christmas. And which is called Christmas actually on this schedule. But if you want to swap that shift, you can say accept swap, and then the schedule gets updated automatically. And in this case, we require approval from the scheduler. So the scheduler has to say it's okay before it goes through. So you can really publish your draft schedule and let your staff iron out the details with the swap feature. That's time saver number 3. You don't have to be the person in the middle of those trades. All right. I'm talking too much today. It's getting close to the top of the hour. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I am going to spend a couple more minutes zipping through these other icons at the top, talking about what they do, but we are at about 1 o'clock Eastern and 10 a.m. West Coast. Let's go for it. And by the way, if you have questions for me and you want to get them ready and put them in the chat window, fire away. No worries there. Let me go from left to right. We've got the table view of the schedule, which looks kind of crowded right now. The calendar view of the schedule. Work preferences, or as I call it, the profile page. The Sigma icon, 4th from the top left for statistics and tallies. And then we've got the various tools here. I'll start from the top left. Blue dot over the white dot, that's schedule content. This is great if you have a really big schedule with a lot of rows, because you can create different subgroups. You can take your big schedule and turn some rows on or off so that you've got something like the AM night schedule, which represents part of the schedule, but not the whole thing. Maybe another subset might be the SICU weekend schedule. This doesn't make much sense on this schedule because there are so few rows here. But imagine if you had a big schedule with tons and tons of rows, you might want to chop it up into more manageable pieces. So you could take a huge schedule with 80 rows of clinic and divide it up into AM and PM, or north site, south site. That's one way to make big schedules more manageable. That's schedule content. We've got our sidekick, the info box. You can see how helpful that tool has been. We've got our date range selector, the Sigma with the blue arrow through it. That's going to let us change our date range. You can tack on one more day to the end of your grid if you want. You can look at a 2-week chunk of time. Most people do schedule in 1-month blocks, though. That's usually the most straightforward. We can customize our shift times. We know that AM clinic usually runs 8 a.m. to noon, but maybe we need to customize that. Whoops. I think our AM clinic is still running 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., which is probably the default hour. Let's make it run 8 a.m. to noon all the time. But, on Monday, the 5th, everybody gets out of AM clinic a little bit early to make it to conference on time. So 11:45 is when things end. And you know what? Maybe that's true every Monday. We want to click the blue arrow here and make it so that the timing is a little bit different every Monday. So the rest of the week, it's 8 to noon, but Mondays, it ends at 11:45. So you customize certain days like that if you want to. You can split shifts. Tuesday, Ahmed is doing AM clinic, but can't do the whole shift. We've got Patel, who's going to come in and take over at 9:45 a.m. So now these two will split this shift. And the split happens whenever I whenever I decide it does. So, and we can do three-way splits as well if you need to. There is a note option. Yeah, notes are pretty straightforward. You can add notes all over the place. Notes can be public, they can be private, they can be color-coded, they can be tied to people, they can be tied to days, you can put a note pretty much any place. I'll make a pink note that says soccer at 2 p.m. By default, notes are mouse over items, so they show up when you hold your mouse over something. But if you do have to print the schedule, it'll print pretty cleanly. Zoom out a little bit. There we go. Notes that are mouse over notes get added to a little legend down here at the bottom if you're printing. And printouts do include this time and date stamp. So up at the top left, you'll have the time of day and date, so you know how fresh that piece of paper hanging up on the cubicle wall is. Oh, by the way, notes that get added to dates instead of assignments, like if I add a note to the 7th as a date, they end up in a separate meeting schedule. Out online at my fake schedule, there's this icon that looks like a figure in front of a screen, like a presenter. This is a meetings schedule. These are all the notes that have been added to, oh, I'm sorry, this is Cindy's personal schedule. I want to back up and look at meetings for the whole group. These are meetings that the whole group has been assigned to, or in some cases, some of the whole group has been assigned to. You can add a meeting to a day, conference, noon, something like that. And then you can decide what staff are going to be assigned to it. Here's a sneak peek at that really complex rule writer I alluded to earlier, where you can, this will be the part that scares folks. You can add all kinds of rules in here about who can do what, based on which Tuesday it is and whether it's a full moon. And I'm being silly, of course, but there are lots of constraints you can add and parameters you can give to rules. But anyway, long story short, notes can get added to dates as well, and they become part of a separate meetings schedule. There's the highlighter tool. You've seen me use that to kind of highlight all of somebody's assignments. I'll turn that off for the moment. And then the question mark takes you to the website's help index. Remember that out at amion.com, we've got that help page with all the commonly asked questions and answers and an actual recording of this session. I'll update this recording and post it out there shortly. I've got a knock at my door, but this is a good chance for me to let you guys ask any questions that you might have. I'm going to mute myself and be right back. Cool. Okay. I see just one question. And oh, hey there. The question is learning something new. So about the self-swap, the chief of our division are asking, is there or can there be in the near future someone who can submit a swap for an entire week? That's an awesome question. I think that's you, Carolee. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So to answer your question, right now, not possible, as you know. As we rebuild this thing in the spring, I'm thinking like April, I'm going to get the chance to make all the changes I've been wanting to make for years and years. I have a wish list going. It's about 12 years old. And that's one of the things that is on my wish list, but I would be happy to move it up on the list. Anytime somebody asks me something, the more people that ask about it, I move things up higher on the list, and we're going to run that down. It would be awesome to be able to select, for example, an entire week of assignments and then swap with somebody else. Great for hospitalists' schedules who work a 7 on, 7 off kind of thing. You might want to swap your whole week away. Having to swap each individual shift in that week creates a whole bunch of email. You're right. Another question, is it best to go under the window option and select call and shift patterns for specific providers that work the same facility for each week or month? Yeah, that's one way to do it. I would also encourage you to check out the template tool. The template tool is more like a copy and paste. Let me also mention one more thing. There are some preloaded patterns that already exist. For example, if AM Clinic is the same person all the time, you can click on AM Clinic along the left, and you don't have to build a pattern. You could just use the existing Q1 pattern. Q1 means the same person every day, whereas Q2 means every other day. Q1 might be every day, and then I drop a person in on a Q1 pattern, and they get all the AM clinics for that month automatically. So might want to check those out. There's also the template tool. Out at the website's help index, the template tool is a good copy and paste en masse kind of thing where you can say this week happens the same way next week. And that's a big time saver as well. You can have the weeks repeat over and over again to fill up the whole year if you want to. That tool lives under the window option as well, but probably best place to learn more about that is the help index out at the website. There's a template tool. It's right about in the middle here on the second column. I usually do a Control F to look for some wording in the help index that gets me there at the fastest. Yeah, sure. No problem at all. Yep, you bet. You bet. I'm running a little bit over. It's about 10 after the hour. I should probably knock off and go make myself some more coffee. Coffee is life over here at Amion. I'll hang out in the session for a couple more minutes in case there are more questions. But like I mentioned earlier, out at amion.com, the contact link, this will be the best way to reach us. You can give us a call if you want to set up more of like a one-on-one kind of conversation, like a screen share. Probably best to shoot us an email and suggest a time or two that works best for your group. Yeah, we're happy to help, and I really appreciate your time today and your questions. Okay, I think that's about it from me. I'm going to leave the session open in case anybody wants to stick around, but that's the end of Amion 101. Thanks for your time, and I hope you guys have a nice rest of the week.